Darkness enveloped the damp cave, and the sound of terrifying screams echoed through the walls. The goblins were celebrating the death of their leader. One goblin with bloodshot red eyes went mad and declared himself the new leader. However, his comrade disagreed, believing that he had done the most work and should be the leader instead. Filled with envy and rage, he charged at his comrade, biting into the other's nose. The cave was now filled with chaos. Screams rang out more violently. Other goblins gathered around, watching the battle with amusement and betting on who would win. It was their favorite pastime. Chaos brought endless joy to these simple souls. However, amidst the excitement, they discussed bringing the prey out to satisfy their desires because the old leader had hidden a human girl and had not touched her yet. They started whispering to each other, plotting to find and take her for themselves. Some goblins hesitated because the prey was protected by a different goblin. He was unlike the other goblins, while other goblins wore simple clothes to cover their private parts. He had covered himself with tattered clothes that covered almost his entire body, and his appearance was terrifying not only because of his clothes, but also because of the aura he exuded like a human being. And when the leader died, they believed that this different one would keep the prey for himself. They stared at the strange goblin. They would follow him and snatch the girl when they had the chance. Some smarter goblins, they suggested waiting a little longer because their strongest members had gone ahead to find the prey. They were planning to let the strange goblin fight. Those guys then take advantage of the chaos to kill him and finally take the prey for themselves. However, they didn't expect the strange goblin to be able to hear their conversation. Knowing that the girl was in danger, the strange goblin decided to run back to where she was being held captive. With his speed, he easily lost the other goblins. When he arrived at the location, he was horrified to find the rebellious goblins ready to violate the girl. The girl begged for help, her eyes wide with fear. He spoke to them, telling them to release the girl. The leading goblin and refused this request. The leader was dead. He felt like he was the strongest goblin in the group and this prey was his. The strange goblin didn't care about that. He was determined to protect this girl. Seeing this, the big goblin and his henchmen decided to attack and kill the strange goblin. Outnumbered, the strange goblin was quickly subdued, but he didn't give up. He didn't believe that these low-level goblins could defeat him, and more importantly, he didn't want to die here. Seizing the opportunity, he used his weapon to kill the biggest goblin, causing the others to fear. Never before had a goblin used a sharp weapon and attack like a human being. The strange goblin pointed his weapon at the rest. His words were emotionless. Leave or die. These words and the image of the giant being killed quickly frightened them. The remaining goblins fled, not forgetting to shout threats. They would return with reinforcements to take him down. When the other goblins left, but the strange goblin still wasn't letting his guard down. Trying to regain his composure, he knew that this was just the beginning of the hellish days to come when he decided to fight against his own kind. This girl's name was Kelly. She supported him and thanked him for saving her once again. She could tell that he was different from the other goblins. He had never harmed her. She hoped he wouldn't die. It is true that a goblin would never protect a human, but there was a deeper reason for the strange goblin's actions. You guessed it right. He was a human. A few days ago, Lampin died in a terrible accident. He didn't expect that. Instead of meeting God after being hit by a truck, he was transferred to another world with a system. However, his system wasn't fully activated yet. Besides being able to see some stats, it didn't seem to have any other functions and it seemed quite useless. But since meeting Kelly, she told him about the role of those stats in this world. This world was ruled by gods with many powerful monsters, and humans had demonstrated their role on this continent through absolute power. Unfortunately, the goblin he was reborn as was the weakest and dirtiest monster in this world, and his stats were extremely low, so he would be easily killed by his own kind. Currently he was level 5, HP 20, Strength 5, Defense 5, and these stats gave him an overall strength of 30. Luckily his name didn't change. He was still Lamveen. However, there was still a way for him to become stronger here, and that was through mating with girls in this harsh reality. Goblins were capable of becoming stronger through constant mating and procreation. However, they do not have a female gender, so they could only mate with other female creatures. That's why goblins constantly plundered and kidnapped women. Lam Tien, a former human, found doing so completely against his morals, but to survive he had to be stronger. This issue always worried him. Seeing Lam Tien's worry, the girl told him not to think too much. After spending days with him, she knew that he was completely different from the other goblins and really didn't want to live with them. With a hopeful smile, she promised that when the knights came to rescue her, she would tell them about how he saved her because the knights were always fair and just. They would surely agree to let him live in her village. Her optimism gave Lam Thin hope. He believed what she said. He was full of hope, even if the system couldn't activate immediately. As long as he persevered until the humans came to rescue them and gained the protection of humans, he could survive. Then he could slowly figure out a way to fully activate the system. However, things weren't as easy as Lam Tien had hoped. A scream, a sign of the goblins returning to them without hesitation. He ordered Celia to hide and she obeyed. Immediately, the first goblin appeared. It charged wildly at Lam Tien, screaming that humans had appeared and that it wanted to mate with the girl to become stronger because it knew that once it became stronger, it wouldn't be killed. The goblin ran frantically looking for Celia. However, its haste made it an easy target for Lam Tien, who quickly killed the unfortunate goblin. Lam Tien quickly informed Celia that humans were here to save her. Kelly's face lit up with joy. She assumed it was a knight. She said she would go out to check. Thini looked at her with concern. The appearance of a knight meant Celia would be saved, and perhaps an opportunity for him to prove his worth. But his excitement was stifled when he saw a knight easily killing the other goblins with his strength. The knight wasn't putting in much effort to deal with the goblins. This human seemed to be venting his anger, clearly complaining that these filthy creatures had ripped his clothes. Seeing the human stats lamp, Thien was incredibly surprised. His name was Loader, level 25 with strength 30 and defense 50. Equipped with platinum armor and an iron sword with a total power of 400. This was the highest stat Lamptheon had seen since coming to this world, making him question if Loader was actually human. While Lamptheon stood in place, amazed at how easily the human dealt with the goblins, Kelly excitedly approached, addressing Loader. Delighted to see him, however, Lamptheon quickly noticed that Loader was raising his sword to attack Celia. With quick reflexes, he pushed her away from the attack just in time. Despite saving Celia from death, the sudden attack baffled Lam Tien. The Holy Knights were supposed to be here to save people. Why were they attacking Celia? He assumed that because the cave was quite dark, he had mistaken the girl for a goblin. But that didn't seem to be the case, as Loader angrily expressed his disdain for a goblin. Having dodged his attack, Celia quickly tried to explain she was a human, but Loader told her to be silent because he knew who she was. However, he believed she had been defiled by the goblins and might even be pregnant with their child. It was laughable to him that someone as filthy as her would expect mercy from him. It would be better for her if she repented her sins and paid for them with death. Celia begged him, insisting that even though she was captured, she hadn't been defiled by the goblins. Then she pointed to Lam Tien, explaining that he was the one who had protected her. But unfortunately, Loader didn't believe a word she said. The idea that a goblin had saved her and wasn't a human enemy was beyond the bounds of a believable story. He raised his sword to end her. Lanthianine couldn't believe what he was seeing. He didn't expect things to end so quickly. With no other choice, Lampkin stepped forward without hesitation, pushing Kelly aside and facing Loader. He hoped there would be enough time for Kelly to escape. Lampkin grabbed his crude weapon and lunged at Loader. This was an outcome he hadn't expected, but even if he had to sacrifice himself, he wanted to protect the girl. This could be the act that would prove he was once human. But before the collision, an aura enveloped Lampkin, leaving both him and Loader astonished. This magic came from a woman dressed in white. Her aura exuded holiness and solemnity. She demanded Loader stop because she felt this goblin was strange. This woman was none other than the Saint Ephra. Seizing the opportunity, Kelly crawled over and begged her to save them. Ifra helped Celia to her feet and presented her to Loader, who had tried to kill her just minutes ago. Then Ephra turned her attention to Lamine and asked if he could understand what she was saying. Lamine was trapped within the barrier according to what Celia had told him. Ifra was the saint and the spokesperson for the divine temple. She could be his only hope of leaving this place alive. Lamartine quickly responded that he could understand. He took a deep breath and kept saying he wasn't a monster of this world, and he used to be human, but he became this way due to an accident. He could explain everything if she took him along. While Loader thought this goblin was just a bit smarter than the others, Ifra smiled. Goblins are usually stupid and lowly creatures. They can't think or speak fluently, but this goblin can speak, and this might be a blessing from the Holy Mother. The holy woman Effort turned to Celia and asked her to confirm if this goblin really didn't hurt her. Celia happily confirmed that Lamine not only didn't hurt her, but he protected her from other goblins and gave her food. This pleased Ifra. She realized the strangeness of the goblin. She decided to take it back to the temple and study it thoroughly before making any decision. Hearing this, Kelia was very happy because she fulfilled her promise to the goblin. Ifrit then turned to Lamp and asked if he was willing to go with them. Hearing this, Lamp, Tien was very happy. He immediately replied that he was willing. Finally, everything seemed to be getting better for Lamp Tien because he was with someone who could listen and understand reason. With a snap of her fingers, Ifrit quickly broke the barrier that imprisoned Lamp. Then she ordered everyone to prepare to leave. Lamp Tien felt a sense of safety about his future, which he was incredibly grateful for. So he immediately approached Effort to express his gratitude, promising that he would repay her. But as he looked closer at her face, he noticed a cruel smile that took him by surprise. The next thing he heard was a sound he was all too familiar with, the sound of metal piercing flesh. He knew what was happening, but he turned back in fear. The fear was immediately confirmed. Celia was killed. The lifeless body lay motionless on the cold ground. Lamartine was stunned, unable to move. The shock was too great, just as he thought things were getting better. Turned out to be a cruel lie. At this moment, the voice of the woman he thought was the savior rang out, along with the cruel laughter. She mocked his naivety and said that his willingly following her was the best way to repay her, and Lamartine understood the cruel reality of this world. A week has passed in the village. The bell tolls, summoning everyone to the town square. As they gather, Loader addresses the assembled villagers, announcing the devastating goblin attack on Bright Town. This incites fury among the villagers. They demand blood for blood, seeing humans and goblins as sworn enemies. Exactly the reaction Loader had hoped for. After whipping up their hatred, Loader begins to praise the temple. The knights, he explains acting on the temple's behalf, have slain these goblins and avenged the villagers. Then the holy maiden Fia steps forward with her powers. She creates a dazzling spectacle, urging the villagers to continue praying to the temple. She assures them that the temple will always protect its faithful. Her words instantly sway the villagers, even those previously skeptical. Their faith is reignited and they turn to the temple with devotion and trust. Later, Fia returns to her chambers, basking in the success of her speech. It's nothing new. These villagers are the most gullible fools imaginable. They'll pray even harder, worship the temple more fervently, and bring her more offerings. Her smug satisfaction is abruptly interrupted by a voice calling her name. The person who called her name was the Goblin Lamb. He has regained consciousness and it's clear he's been through hell. Horrifying scars cover his body and one eye has been gouged out. Despite his injuries, a burning rage burns in his eye. Fia ignores his words. A twisted smile plays on her lips. She's amazed by his tenacious spirit. It's been a long time since she'd seen such tenacious life. Perhaps this is why the temple hasn't been able to eradicate all goblins from the continent. Lamartine's return to consciousness excites Ifra. She can continue her experiments, observing how the poison affects him. Lamartine, enraged, repeats his accusations. You tricked me. You killed Celia. Is this the true face of your temple? This so-called justice humans boast about? His fury is met with Zephyr's cruel indifference. She silences him with a sharp thrust of a staff against his mouth. She laughs, mocking his anger. How dare a weak, filthy creature like you, a degenerate goblin, speak of human justice? She claims Celia was under a spell and dared to speak for him. A betrayal, therefore death was her final act of loyalty. Goblins are nothing more than insects on this continent, she continues. It's a great honor that the Holy Maiden even speaks to you. Be grateful and use your wretched little body to serve mankind and the temple's experiments. The brutal torture continues, helpless to resist the endless, unbearable pain. Even when he falls unconscious, he's quickly awakened by the torment. In his torture, he wonders if he'll die here. He doesn't want to, but he can't blame anyone but himself. He was so foolish. Reborn as a lowly goblin, he had naively believed in humans in the kindness of those not of his kind. His weakness and naivety led to Kelly's death after he was captured by the villagers. Loader and Ifrit tortured and tormented him with every imaginable cruelty. They never believed his words, taking sick pleasure in his suffering. Lamartine's suffering eventually comes to an end. He's tortured to death by the cruel woman. His only wish in his final moments, if he had another chance, was to never trust humans again. If he could do it again, he'd crush their bones and drink their blood. But that was only if he could be reborn. As his consciousness fades, instead of drifting into an endless void, Lamartine awakens in a different space, a place filled with brilliant white light and twinkling stars. His body is fully healed before he can ask where he is. A system window appears. It informs him that the Goblin life simulation system has been activated and he has died. A brief summary of his life flashes before him. Due to your naivety, you forgot you were a goblin. Humans will never trust goblins. You died from torture and abuse. This pain will be engraved in your mind and you will never forget. As a result, you are the most tragic character in the rebirth system. Do you want to start again? Yes or no? Lampin is startled. His system only activated when he died, and this system might allow him to be reborn. But will he be reborn as a low-level goblin this time? The system reminds him, if you choose no, your soul will completely dissipate. If you choose yes, you will be reborn into a goblin body 1 week earlier. This made him incredibly excited. A week ago, this was his chance for revenge. He had to get revenge on Loader and Ephra. Of course, he chose to be reborn again. A white light enveloped his body, signaling the start of his Goblin 2.0 life. Lamartine's eyes were now filled with rage. This rebirth was slightly different because this was his Goblin 2.0 life to help him live longer. The system decided to give him a little more power. Feeling his strength, Lamartine smiled with satisfaction. Even if it was just a little, coming back to life was the most important thing. But it seemed this was his only chance, because the system immediately warned him of danger. People from the temple were coming, and if he died again, he wouldn't be reborn. This shocked him, but he didn't expect more. Being reborn once was already a miracle. He wasn't strong enough to fight the temple yet, so he immediately asked the system what he could do. The system explained that it was called the Goblin Life Simulation System. It could simulate his life and predict future events. Each different choice would lead to different outcomes. Each simulation required 24 hours to complete. After the simulation, he would earn points from each simulation, which he could use to exchange for items in the system. This made Lamartine chuckle. This simulation method meant he could see the future, so he immediately started using the simulation. The system reminder displayed the current situation. Escape the Goblin Cave. To escape, he had to make choices. 1. Warn his goblin friends and unite to face the humans. The reward would be 10 points. 2. Abandon the other goblins and escape on his own. The reward would be 5 points. 3. Hide in the cave and pray the temple. People don't find him. The reward would be 0 points. Lamartine thought about it. Even though there were 3 options, he was sure that even if all the goblins in the cave united, they couldn't defeat Loader. The battle would end with their deaths, and he wouldn't be able to escape. But he still chose to simulate the first option. He hoped that, with the points he earned, he could exchange for a weapon from the shop. Then he could kill a Loader with a sneak attack. As predicted, after the simulation, all the goblins were killed. The result was a complete failure. The system asked him to think carefully when making decisions and also gave him 10 points. Lamartine was happy that he got the points even though his plan failed. He quickly opened the system's shop. Many weapons appeared immediately and he could exchange for them, but the problem was that his points were too low. The only thing he could exchange for was a short knife. It could increase his movement speed by 10% and his strength by 15 points. He grabbed the knife, those stats were immediately added to his information panel. At this point, Lamartine remembered Celia. He asked why he didn't see her. The system informed him that due to his rebirth, some events in this world had changed. Celia wasn't captured by the goblins. She was living happily with her family in the village. Knowing this made Lamartine very happy. A smile appeared on his face. He felt he had fulfilled his promise to bring her home. Now he had no worries on his path to revenge. The thing to do now was to escape and survive. He chose a narrow exit to go out. This place was small, so there would definitely be fewer guards. There were only 2 guards outside. They were discussing their work. These goblins were very weak and thin. Heard their conversation. He carefully advanced to the entrance of the cave. The 2 guards talked to each other. Since this passage was small, any goblin that ran out would be easy to kill. Loader had asked them to kill any girl who ran out and not let them return to the village. This conversation confirmed Lamson's belief that everyone in the temple was a bunch of bastards who were willing to kill their own people. Therefore, a goblin like him had no reason to be merciful to them. Lamson pinched his nose, trying his best to imitate a woman's voice of distress, and pleaded for help. The guards immediately paid attention to it. They wanted to kill the girl and receive a reward from Loader. One of them entered the cave with a knife behind his back. He told the girl not to be afraid. He was a temple man and he was here to take everyone home. But instead of a woman, it was Lam Thin, with a sharp knife pointed at the knight at the exit. The knight noticed the strange behavior of his comrade and decided to check on him. As he approached, he was shocked to see a goblin standing there in a flash lamp themed through the knight's body away, then charged toward the terrified knight at incredible speed. His agility allowed him to easily wound the knight, who fell to the ground in pain. The knight, overcome with fear, screamed, "You can speak human." Lanthina's sharp steel blade was the only answer to the knight's fear. Knowing you is no match for Lamartine's power. The knight realized he was facing death. In desperation, he begged for mercy. He knelt, pleading for compassion, and showed Lamartine a picture of his family, hoping for a chance to return to them. He praised Lamartine's intelligence, claiming he would understand that he was merely following the orders of the temple. He insisted that he was forced into doing what he did. The knight offered Lamartine a bag of gold and a beautiful woman, promising to select the most alluring one for him. However, for a man like Lam Veen who had been betrayed, these words only fueled his anger. The knight's true nature was exposed. He had planned to use Lam Tien's hesitation to kill him, but it was all part of Lam Tien's plan. He swiftly and coldly ended the knight's life. Lam Tien felt pity for the man's family, but he understood that sometimes ruthlessness was necessary. Evil needed to be eradicated, especially now that he was no longer human. His attention was drawn to a voice coming from the forest. It was louder and his men heading towards them. Lam Tien quickly took off the knight's clothes and left in a hurry, promising to find Loder and Ifer soon. Later, Loder and Ephra arrived at the scene. They were stunned to find the bodies of the two temple knights. After examining the bodies, Loder suspected the goblin ambush. The clean, swift cuts were unusual. Ephra thought it was impossible for a regular goblin to kill both knights. She believed a goblin capable of such a feat must be a mutated one. Loder agreed with her assessment. He was furious that the knights could not handle a mutated goblin, and allowing it to escape was a bad sign. Loder, furious, kicked one of the corpses. Enraged that these knights couldn't handle a mutated goblin, Ephra her lips. Licking couldn't control her excitement and cruelty at the thought of obtaining such a unique specimen for experimentation. Night fell and the moonlight cast an eerie glow on the forest. Lantern panted heavily, happy to be alive. He had run until exhaustion, but he couldn't afford to let his guard down. He tried to recover as quickly as possible to continue his journey. He realized that they hated goblins so much, so he would use the goblin way to deal with them. Goblins could upgrade their attributes for mating and cannibalism, both increasing strength and creating stronger generations. Lamartine's mind was consumed with hatred in this life. He wanted all men to experience only the happiness of death, and all women to kneel and weep at his feet, especially Loder and Ephra. But his thoughts were interrupted by the rustling of leaves. He grew worried, thinking it was one of Loder's henchmen still pursuing him. He decided to strike first to gain an advantage. Without hesitation, Lambkin stood up and charged at his opponent. The unexpected appearance of Lam Thin shocked and frightened the stranger, who stumbled backward. Lam was shocked to find that this was a goblin. The sound it made him think that it could speak. Inertia made Lam Thin also fall forward after recovering his posture. Lambkin was surprised to find that this goblin had characteristics of a female. Why was a female goblin appearing at this time? According to everyone's knowledge, goblins were only male reproduced by mating with other creatures. Her presence had changed Lam Tien's entire perception. In confusion, his eyes were fixed on the female goblin. She thought he was about to do something. She quickly sat up and begged him not to hurt her, explaining that she was just fetching water. This only made Lam Thin more worried. How could this goblin speak complete sentences like him to find the answer? He used his assessment skill to check her attributes. She was level 3, but her profession was God's messenger. She had the titles of Fallen God, Pure Soul with attributes Blood 10, Energy 2 Defense 1 with the skills of Devour and Wild Growth. Her overall strength was 10, and Lanvin was surprised to see the special note. When a male goblin combines with a female goblin, they will become the legendary goblin god. This made Lam Tien have an unclean thought, because if he mated with her, he would have immense power. As if seeing the dark thoughts in Lam Tien's eyes, the girl backed away in fear. She said she was caught by the patriarch to fetch water. If she didn't bring the water back, she would be beaten to death by the patriarch. Seeing the girl scared, Lam Tien spoke up and apologized. He said he didn't mean to scare her. He also patted her shoulder to comfort her, saying that if she cried, it would attract the attention of bad people. But the girl didn't care for Lam Tien's actions. She was concerned about why Lam Thin could also speak in a complete way like her. Her eyes lit up with excitement. Lamartine laughed and nodded because of her cuteness. This was reasonable because ordinary goblins couldn't speak, and maybe she rarely talked to other people in the tribe. However, Lamartine's line of thought was once again interrupted. He noticed the girl was clinging to his cloak. She said Lamartine was good because the other goblins just beat her up. This was the first time a goblin treated her like this. The girl suggested that Lamartine return to her tribe with her. This surprised Lamartine. He didn't expect there to be a goblin tribe nearby. He still didn't know if the Loder people were chasing them. It wasn't suitable to ABC right now, and he needed to find a safe place to hide. Lamartine's eyes lit up. This was a good opportunity for him to recruit his first followers. Right after that, he suggested that the girl take him to her tribe. The girl agreed without blushing. It seems because this was the first time she met a goblin as handsome as this. She immediately agreed to take him to her camp. Soon after they arrived at the goblin camp, Lampion's appearance made the other goblins extremely wary because he was a stranger and dressed like a human, something goblins had never seen before. Lampin calmly observed with the number of goblins here. He felt very satisfied and decided to start building his kingdom from here. With a calm attitude, he explained to the goblins that he wanted to join them and he wanted to meet their leader, but this proposal was immediately rejected. They decided that a freak like Lamartine couldn't meet the patriarch. They decided to capture Lamvine and then bring him to see the patriarch. At this time, the girl worriedly stepped forward to block the goblins. She said that Lam Tien was a good person. The commotion had attracted the patriarch's attention. He inquired about the situation. His appearance surprised Lamartine a little. The patriarch's name was an old goblin with a staff decorated with many skulls. He looked very ferocious. His appearance was completely different from the goblins had seen before. Besides his clothes, he also had very high stats with level 25. Priest profession. Blood 102. Mana 29. Defense 17 with the skills of Devour. Summon. Thorn. Control equipment is skull, staff and bone chains and has an overall strength of 200. Lambton's eyes lit up with vigilance. He didn't expect there to be such a strong goblin in this tribe. The goblin leader, after appearing slowly walked towards Lamthin. He looked at the female goblin, asking if she had brought the stranger back to the camp. The girl, filled with worry, confirmed that she had brought Lam Tien to the camp, explaining that he had nowhere else to go with his terrifying red eyes. The leader praised the girl for doing a good job, but then, to her surprise, he ordered other goblins to grab Lam Thin, exhausted, stating that she couldn't walk anymore. She had been walking all day and was utterly drained. She didn't receive any help from her own kind. Instead, they beat her, calling her ugly and threatening to kill her if she didn't find the iron ore. She kept pleading, but the abuse didn't stop. They wanted to kill her right then and there for being lazy. Unable to bear the sight, Lamartine picked up a rock and threw it at the head of one of the goblins. This action caused them to look at him with angry eyes. Lamartine explained that he wanted them to follow and help find the iron ore, not to fight. He said he would tell them what iron ore looks like, and that if they wanted to live in return, they should go to the valley ahead and bring back some iron ore. If they didn't listen, he would kill them right then and there. Lamartine took out his knife and glared at the three goblins with a terrifying expression. This threat terrified them as they imagined him killing them with the iron weapon. They rushed off to find iron ore, not forgetting to threaten Lamartine with death if he failed to create weapons. Lamartine thought to himself that sooner or later they would kill him after obtaining iron tools. The task at hand was to become stronger. Looking at Gobo's information, the notification about mating with her to become a goblin, God caught his eye. Lampin decided it was time to do the things adults do. Seeing Gobu crying, Lampin told her to stop. He sat down beside Gobu and asked her if she wanted to follow him. He promised to protect her, feed her, give her a warm home and ensure no one would bully her. The girl was confused at these words, asking if he was telling the truth. Looking at the girl sincerely, Lampin affirmed that everything he said was true. However, he was currently too weak to prevent further bullying. He needed to become stronger and Gobu was the only one who could help him. The girl, confused, asked what she could do to help him become stronger. Anthene felt a little embarrassed, but he said that if they mated he would become stronger. This made the girl's face turn red. The girl looked at Lampin with suspicion, asking if he was telling the truth. She said she had never tried this before. Lampin was also a little flustered about bringing up this topic. He reassured her that everything would be fine and that he would help her if she wanted it. Without waiting for her response, Lam Tame gently kissed her soft lips and then laid her down on the ground. The girl, embarrassed, agreed, saying she would bear his children. Then, shy sounds echoed through the air. At the same time, notifications appeared one after another, informing him that mating had raised his current level to level 7, and the sound of upgrading echoed. The increase in level also increased his attribute. After a while, Lamthine's body began to change, his muscles becoming more defined. He was now level 7 with 40 HP, 10 strength, 6 defense, and a total strength of 65. Lamthine was surprised at the change in his body. He thought that if he continued like this, he could defeat the goblin leader. Lam Tien warmly stroked Gobu's head. He told her that she was his wife now and he would protect her forever. The girl blushed and, exhausted, thanked Lam Tien, calling him a good person. At this moment, a cry for help caught their attention. Looking in that direction, they saw a goblin running towards them in fear, followed by a large wolf. What caught Lam Tien's attention was the iron ore in the goblin's hand. He didn't expect to find iron ore here, but before he could get it, he had to deal with this problem first. Lam Tien immediately grabbed his knife. He asked Gobu to wait there for him. Gobu looked at Lam Tien with trust, reminding him to be careful. For Lam Tien, this wolf was a test of his strength. The wolf was about to catch the unfortunate goblin, who was desperately trying to escape. But Lam Tien suddenly appeared, wielding his sharp iron knife, charging directly at the large wolf. The fleeing goblin was completely taken aback by this action. Then, it was filled with fear when it saw Lam Tien kill the wolf with one blow. In the goblin's eyes, Lamthine had become a terrifying figure. When Lamthine asked it to give him the iron ore, it immediately handed it over, overwhelmed with fear. Holding the iron ore in his hand, Lamthine laughed with delight at the high quality of the ore. Now, they needed more of this, and after they returned, he would make weapons for the goblins and the tribe. 2 days passed, and with the help of other goblins, Lamthine was able to successfully create a spear with an iron blade. Although it wasn't pretty, it was a major accomplishment for Lamthine and the goblins. The goblins couldn't believe Lamthine could actually create a weapon out of iron, but they wondered if it would actually work. To prove the effectiveness of the new weapon, Lamthine easily plunged the spearhead into the tough skull of the number 1 crocodile wolf. As expected, the spearhead easily pierced through. This demonstration astonished the other goblins. The goblin Lamthine had saved before was incredibly excited, pointing at the crocodile wolf's corpse. He said he had seen Lamthine kill the wolf in just a few seconds using the iron weapon, and that he really could make weapons. The other goblins agreed that the iron spear was much more powerful than the stone spears. While the goblins were discussing, Lamthine held the spear high and asked them if they wanted weapons like this. Without hesitation, the other goblins shouted excitedly that they wanted one, and they hailed him as a god. Only one of the goblins present was not happy. The goblin leader was angry that a newcomer had stolen his respect. The leader grabbed attention by slamming the skull-headed staff in his hand onto the ground with menacing red eyes. He admitted that Lamthine wasn't lying. Creating a weapon out of iron was a miracle, but it wasn't enough for Lamthine to stay in the tribe. While Lamthine and the other goblins listened, the leader demanded that Lamthine create 50 iron spears within 2 days. After making his demand, the leader immediately left. The other goblins didn't agree with this condition, but they didn't dare object. They felt the leader was too cruel, and they decided to help Lamthine complete the task. Lamthine wasn't surprised by the condition. He laughed confidently. He felt it was very advantageous that he had now earned the respect of the other goblins. This was a good step forward in his plan. On the day of the delivery, Lamthine had completed 50 iron spears. The goblins in the tribe were also very happy that Lamthine could stay in the tribe. With the same menacing look and cunning smile, the leader said he was very satisfied that Lamthine had completed the task and could now stay. To celebrate Lamthine joining the tribe, the leader decided to hold a feast and demanded that everyone participate. The goblins immediately started dancing and celebrating. The feast quickly took place around the bonfire. Gobu cut out a piece of pork and brought it to Lamthine. This was the best part, so she wanted him to eat it. Lamthine happily accepted, but after eating for a while, a sharp pain hit him. Lamthine fell to the ground in agony, and Gobu was terrified. It was clear that Lamthine had been poisoned. The poisoner was none other than the leader. He walked up to Lamthine with an evil smile. He told Lamthine he was too stupid. The leader said he knew Lamthien's true intentions, and those who dared challenge his authority had only one place to go: hell. Before Lamthine could speak, the leader grabbed Gobu's hair and pulled her towards him. The leader said he saw that Lamthine cared about her very much. So now he would let Lamthine experience the pain of watching her die in front of him. A red line of blood appeared on Gobu's neck as the leader's claws stabbed into her. The leader wanted to crush Lamthien's arrogance and make him suffer. In Gobu's terrified eyes, a red stream of blood spurted out. But it wasn't Gobu's blood. It was the leader's, as his arm was cut off. Lamthine had done it. The leader fearfully asked why he could move after being poisoned. Lamthine smiled. He said the leader was an idiot. When facing a villain like him, he was always vigilant and he was just pretending, but actually Lamthine knew he was going to be poisoned because the system had warned him. The leader was now incredibly angry. He had no choice but to fight. He had lost an arm, so his fighting power had decreased. He used the bone chain in his hand to attack Lamthine. Lamthine also quickly attacked. With his speed, Lamthine easily dodged the attack. Lamthine jumped and his iron knife aimed at the leader's head. The leader was killed. The goblins saw that their leader was dead and were terrified. Lamthine looked at them and declared that he would be their new leader. He would lead them to become a powerful goblin tribe, and they would always have meat to eat. Lamthine hugged Gobu and raised his knife high. He declared his supremacy over the tribe. With Lamthine's strength, the other goblins readily agreed to him being their leader. After all, they were simple-minded creatures who only cared about meat and mating. And the reward Lamthine gave for their loyalty was the leader's corpse. Given permission, they immediately revealed their vicious nature. They devoured the corpse in a cruel and savage way, making Lamthine feel disgusted, but this was the reality of life. What mattered to him now was building his tribe, nurturing the next generation of goblins to make the tribe stronger. This was just the first step on his revenge. Amidst the chaos, no one noticed one pair of eyes watching everything from afar. It was a golden-haired elf girl. As she witnessed the scene, she wondered what was happening. Under the hazy moonlight of the strange world, amidst the ominous shadows of the trees, strange-looking houses appeared. A figure moved with incredible speed, taking just a few leaps to enter a brightly lit house. But what was truly striking was the horrifying scene below. Countless withered, blue goblin corpses hung from large bones. If Lin Tian had witnessed this, he would have been terrified. The elf girl stopped in front of a house. This was the one who had secretly watched Lin Tian's tribe. The princess of this elf tribe, Kasana, a guard elf, saw her and was overjoyed to see her return. Ignoring the guard, Kasana immediately went inside. The guard was worried, wanting her to stop, as if there was something inside. Before she could turn away, the queen's voice rang out. She demanded Kasana stop and asked what urgent matter brought her there so hastily. Kasana's eyes turned serious, and she once again mentioned the goblin tribe in the forest. The queen didn't seem interested. She considered goblins low-level, weak, and filthy creatures. Kasana quickly explained, I found the remains of a bear in the demon forest, completely chewed up. There are signs of a struggle. Many goblin footprints on the ground. The bear was likely killed by goblins from the demon forest. That giant bear is practically the strongest creature in the forest. Those goblins shouldn't be able to kill it. Her voice grew anxious. A few days ago, I saw the goblin leader killed by a young goblin. I'm worried the bear's death is connected to that goblin. The queen was slightly surprised to hear about the new leader, but didn't seem overly concerned. What interested her was the growing number of goblins. The queen snapped her fingers, asking the man to continue serving her. She ordered Kasana to lead a group to eliminate the goblins, but told her not to kill them all, leave a few alive. This wasn't out of kindness. The queen wanted to harvest the hearts of living goblins to brew a tonic for the elf men in her tribe. Of course, Kasana knew the effects of this potion. Hearing this, she face flushed again. Due to Kasana's diligence, the queen offered her a man for the night. She even asked if Kasana had any special requests. Kasana was startled. This reward embarrassed her. She said she had to check on some things tonight and quickly bid farewell to her mother. Back at Lin Tian's camp, the goblins were in a discussion. On the ground was a map of the elf tribe, painstakingly investigated by Lin Tian's subordinates. The tribe consisted of 30 houses, all situated high up. Lin Tian praised his subordinate, promising him 2 elf girls as a reward after defeating the tribe. He told everyone to prepare iron weapons. Hearing about the reward of 2 elf girls, the goblin was excited and eager, immediately going to tell everyone to prepare their weapons. Lin Tian's expression wasn't joyful at the prospect of attacking another tribe. This was a world where strength determined survival. If he didn't build his tribe into a force, sooner or later, they would be destroyed. Lin Tian carefully analyzed the situation. There were 30 houses in the village. If each house 2 elves, there would be a total of 60 elves. Adding the 10 elves guarding the mine, the tribe would have at least 70 people. Looking back, since their leader's death, Lin Tian had led the goblins in crafting weapons and hunting monsters, leveling up their abilities. The goblins, under Lin Tian's command, swept through the forest like a tidal wave, slaughtering countless monsters. These monsters, of course, were eaten. By devouring them, all goblins received new skills such as tusk attacks, skills that hardened their skin like stone, adding 15 points to their defense. Other skills included silent movement and venom production. Not all goblins gained skills from eating monsters, but the tribe's overall strength had improved. Some standout goblins had reached level 18 with high stats. Combined with simple iron spears and armor, they had a total strength of 250. The average strength of goblins in the tribe was now 200, but the elf tribe's collective strength was still significantly higher. This made Lin Tian a little worried. This was a dangerous battle, and Lin Tian wanted to prepare thoroughly. He decided to use the simulation system to find an effective attack method. He discovered unusual signs. Meanwhile, the elves were rushing back to their tribe. Leading the way was Kasana. She couldn't believe that the goblin tribe would attack hers. Initially, she brought a group to eliminate them, but arriving at the camp, she discovered the goblins had changed drastically, especially after hearing about Lin Tian's plans. She wanted to return and report to her mother, but it seemed too late. She was discovered, and arrows flew towards the elves. Now, Kasana lay injured on the ground, terrified. Around her were the bodies of other elves. In the distance, Lin Tian and the other goblins were approaching with sinister smiles. They were delighted to find a live elf. Kasana tried to flee, but she couldn't get up. The wound felt strange, as if the arrow had been poisoned. Lin Tian spoke, surprised at how easily he'd captured Kasana. He said she had arrived at the perfect time. Lin Tian coldly ordered his subordinates to capture all the elves. Kasana was awakened by an unknown liquid, her soaked form revealing stunningly beautiful lines, her dazed eyes evoking thoughts of wicked deeds. The goblins stared at her with lustful gazes, their desire for her undeniable, waiting for the opportune moment. Lampthine grabbed Kasana, acknowledging the undeniable allure of the elf's body, sending the goblins into a frenzy. Capturing her would grant them a chance to defeat the elf queen. Gazed upon as prey, Kasana trembled. She attempted to intimidate Lampthine, calling him a coward. She declared herself the princess of the elves, questioning why he dared kidnap her and threaten her people. She claimed her mother's kindness had allowed Lam Tien and his goblins to survive, for they would have been eradicated long ago. She warned him that if he dared touch her, the Goblin Queen would annihilate all goblins here. Lam Tien only sneered at her threats. He flung Kasana to the ground, mocking her claims about the Elf Queen's kindness. The surrounding goblins echoed his laughter. He pointed to a goblin, stating that what he had heard from his subordinate contradicted Kasana's narrative. He said his subordinates might be foolish, but they never lied. In Kasana's terrified gaze, Lamthine revealed he knew her true purpose, to annihilate all goblins in the forest. He said the Elf Queen wanted to keep some goblins alive, not out of kindness, but for another reason, one he wouldn't bother asking her about. He declared that tonight he would lead his tribe to find out. Since his betrayal by humans, Lam Tien had become cold and cruel to his enemies, a survival tactic, it seemed. He looked at Kasana with an emotionless expression, announcing he would personally deal with her. Kasana was petrified, uttering only faint, choked sounds, followed by a scream that echoed through the forest. It seemed Lam Tien had done something truly horrifying. The system announced Lam Tien had reached level 30, gaining 50 HP, 10 strength, 10 defense, and the skills invisibility and night vision. The scene of the elf village. From the Elf Queen's house came the sounds of moans of pleasure, pleas of exhaustion. Inside, the queen felt heartbroken because her evil desires were not satisfied. She felt regretful that last time she did not catch enough goblins to make tonics for these men. 3 men lay collapsed from exhaustion around her. She suddenly remembered Kasana and asked if she had returned. An elf quickly informed her that Kasana had left on a mission and had not returned, despite being past her expected arrival time. He suggested sending a party to help Kasana, which would also provide them with more goblins to kill and further boost the tribe's fighting abilities. The queen gave him full authority to send people to help Kasana and kill the goblins. A voice pierced the silence, announcing that Kasana wouldn't be returning today. The words sent a jolt of fear through the group, a stark realization that they were under attack. The elf man was about to draw his weapon to fight, when sharp iron arrows came flying, killing the unfortunate man instantly. The elf queen, with a mix of skills and luck, managed to catch one arrow, but was terrified by the sudden appearance of goblins in her home. Lamthine and his goblins entered through the window. He announced he had captured Kasana and she would soon be carrying his child. He called the elf queen his mother-in-law, declaring they were now a family. The elf queen was disgusted by those words. She was furious and wanted to know what Lamthine had done to her daughter. Lamthine pretended to be emotionless and acted as if he didn't understand what she was talking about. This action ignited the elf queen's anger and she charged at him, wanting to kill him immediately. However, it seemed that she was exhausted after being served by 3 men, and her attack was like a child's play to Lamthine. He informed her that the elf tribe was currently surrounded, and if she surrendered obediently, he would consider treating them well. The elf queen collapsed to the ground, feeling her body numb. She couldn't even muster the strength to sit up. Lamthine informed her that the arrow she grabbed earlier had the body fluid of a goblin, which would cause rapid paralysis upon contact. The queen tried to get up in anger. Her body, lacking clothing and covered in sweat, became alluring. Seeing his prey struggling, Lamthine felt intrigued. He said that he knew she had used the goblin's heart as a stimulant. He was surprised that the elves were so depraved and used goblins like that. He guessed that she never imagined a day like this, a day when the goblins she despised would come here for revenge. Hearing these words, the elf queen felt even more scared. She realized that the person in front of her was the strange goblin Kasana mentioned earlier. Screams and cries for help from outside came into the room. The queen asked what was happening, and Lamthine sneered, saying that things seemed to have started. Without giving the elf queen a chance to wait, Lamthine dragged her to the window, allowing her to witness the scene below. He urged her to consider surrendering as soon as possible. Below, the elf village seemed to be burning, flames were everywhere, and war was raging. Goblins were killing the elves. The elves screamed and begged the elf queen to save them, pleading not to be captured by the goblins. Seeing her elf warriors weak against the goblins' attack, the queen's worry and fear overwhelmed her, and she asked a foolish question. She asked Lam Tien what he was to her tribe. Lamphine understood what she meant and said that the elf strength had not weakened. The problem was that his goblin tribe had become stronger and they had no hope of resistance. When the elves were stronger, they slaughtered the goblins. Now the goblins were stronger, and it was natural for them to slaughter the elves. Lamthine asked her to face reality and make a quick decision to minimize the damage. Lamthine approached the elf queen and whispered in her ear that he still needed more powerful warriors, so he would let her live. Whether the others in her tribe survived would depend on her decision right now. Outside, the elf men were still being slaughtered, and the girls were being captured by lustful hands, a barbaric scene. The queen's arrogance collapsed, and she knelt down and begged Lamthine, promised to fulfill all his demands as long as he did not kill her child. The queen sat down and showed her superiority. The plump fruits were displayed in a revealing way. She assured him that she would bring them with her and bear children for him. It is now the next morning in the goblin tribe. The sky is high with plenty of sunshine. The scenery is incredibly beautiful. Kasana and the elf queen met. Kasana was happy to see her mother again, but she is now captured. She has no hope for their future. The elf queen hugged her daughter. She apologized for underestimating the goblins. She didn't expect the goblins' strength to surpass the elves like this. Currently, there are only women and children left in the goblin tribe. They no longer have the ability to defend themselves and protect the elf bloodline. The queen realizes that they have become slaves from now on. They can only try to survive in the goblin tribe. She asks Kasana not to give up hope. Lamthine appeared next to the prison. He told the two to wait obediently to have children for him. He would provide enough food for both. If the two made trouble, he would kill both mercilessly. The elf queen is very obedient. She seems to have accepted her fate. She said she understood, but she has one request. Looking at the young elves who are playing with the young goblins innocently, the elf queen said they are her children. She begged Lamthine to let her take care of those children. He is currently a goblin, but he was once a human. He understands the feeling between mother and children. He is a bit hesitant about this proposal from the queen. At the same time, the system also appears a mission, the motherly love mission. At this time, Gobu called Lamthine. She said she couldn't take care of all the children by herself. She suggested he let the queen take care of the children. Lamthine understands that these children are the future of the goblin tribe. After they grow up, they will increase the tribe's strength. So Lamthine agreed to the elf queen's request. At this time, Lamthine also checked his strength. He has currently met the requirements to upgrade himself with the added stats: blood plus 200, strength plus 30, defense plus 30. Lamthine was surprised when he met the upgrade conditions. The remaining stats were automatically converted into attribute points. Lamthine smiled softly. He decided to continue the path of strengthening himself by mating with strong girls. His current strength can already challenge Loader. After these elves give birth, he will go to Loader for revenge. Quickly, another month passed. In the goblin camp, there were cries of babies. The first children were born. By some miracle, the children born all have the appearance of a goblin. Their ugliness also scared their mothers, and they refused to accept the children as their own. But it's okay. Goblins are a creature with superior vitality. Lamthine wanted to know how many children were born. Gobu calculated for a moment. She replied that there were about 30 to 40 children. The conversation was interrupted by Kasana's scream, which worried Lamthine. She is pregnant with his child anyway. Quickly, Lamthine appeared at the location of Kasana and the elf queen. Kasana, a beautiful elf who had just given birth, was tied up. Beside her were two adult goblins. They wanted to have children with the elf girl, not caring about her weak resistance. But their actions were paid for with their own lives. Lamthine killed one goblin in fear of the remaining goblin. Because Lamthine had ordered that all elves after giving birth should be given rest until they were completely healthy, and those who violated the order would pay with their lives. Lamthine again ordered that from now on the elf's food ration would be increased by 1 apple. These actions made the queen feel more favorably towards Lamthine. The queen said he was a very different person from ordinary goblins. Lamthine said it was just a normal action and the elves would be more obedient if they were treated better. Ending a busy day, Lamthine began to carry out simulations to earn points from the system to exchange for new technologies. The current storyline is the Goblin's Revenge. With the content, you have worked hard and captured the elf tribe and have fertilized all the elves. After a period of pregnancy, the elves gave birth to children with stronger attributes than normal. Realizing that the tribe's strength had increased, and you decided to take revenge on Loader and the others, you decided to return to the village alone and find the location of Loader's knights. Currently, there are 3 situations for Lamthine to choose from. 1. Act alone. Try to kill Loader and the others, at 50 points. 2. Lead the goblins to attack and wipe out the entire village, at 30 points. 3. You wait for a better opportunity, and continue to observe because you think it's not time for revenge, at 10 points. Sitting by the fire, Lamthine continued to think. He wondered if he should find them for revenge so soon. Although Lamthine's current strength can be compared to Loader's, but the strength of Loader's companions cannot be underestimated. With his current strength, Lamthine chose option number 1, act alone, try to kill Loader and the others, add 50 points. What happened next? Lamthine found an opportunity when he found Loader alone. He ambushed Loader and almost managed to kill Loader. But there was a human knight who appeared and rescued Loader. And Lamthine died tragically under that person's sword. Then Loader's group returned to the capital and never appeared again. Immediately, the simulation process ended. A disastrous failure. Encountered the Holy Knight. No chance to escape. Rated 30 points out of 100 points. Reward multiplied by 30 life points. Simulated the Imperial City. The next time is 9 days. Lamthine was surprised that there was a holy knight in such a remote place, and that Loader's group would leave the village and never return. So finding them for revenge is extremely difficult. Hatred has taken over Lam Tien's mind. Knowing he doesn't have much time, he wants to get revenge quickly. Lam Tien decided to go to human territory, currently in the goblin tribe. Besides him, Gobu is the most listened to by other goblins. He decided to put her in charge of the tribe for a few days. The elf queen thought this was a crazy thing to do. If Lam Tien came to human territory and was discovered by them, he would be arrested and killed. Lamthine didn't care much. He said he had a grudge against humans, and he had to get revenge. Before this decision, the elf queen offered to help Lamthine by using invisibility magic on him, helping him not to be discovered by humans. Lamthine chuckled, that's what he wanted. Lamthine said he didn't expect her to care so much about his safety. The queen used magic and said she was just afraid that after Lamthine died, the other goblins would rebel and treat the elves cruelly. And her children are all here. Only when Lamthine returns safely will they be safe. Lamthine only felt that the elf queen was very cunning, and she knew how to survive. Looking at Lamthine leaving, Gobu shouted she would help him take care of the tribe and hoped he would return safely. The scene shifts to the town of Kwangmin. The air here feels heavy with tension. Knights patrol the streets, armed and watchful, while the faces of ordinary citizens reflect their worry. These knights patrol, scanning the area as if searching for something. They don't notice a shadowy figure lurking in a dark alley. This figure is Lam Tien. He silently observes from the shadows, confused by the presence of the patrol and the town's heightened defenses. He suspected the Holy Knights had something to do with this. With growing suspicion, Lamthine leaves the deserted alley. He walks for a long time without hearing anything about Loader's group. This strangeness made Lamthine's steps become more hurried. The elf's invisibility spell ensures he remains unnoticed. To find useful information, Lamthine decides to go to the town square, where many people are gathered. He notices a group of armed individuals gathered in front of a large bulletin board. The board displays a ranking list of the knights in the town. The ranking list isn't particularly interesting. There's 1 platinum level adventurer, 2 silver level ones, and the rest are bronze level. What catches Lamthine's eye is Loader's name at the top of the list. This confirms that Loader has grown stronger. This information is useful to Lamthine. He needs to use this time to gather more information and plan carefully. Rushing into things will inevitably lead to failure in his quest for revenge. Lamthine quickly blends into the crowd moving through the streets. Having been a human himself, Lamthine knows that the best place to gather information is a tavern. To his surprise, even before entering the tavern, he hears a familiar voice. A cunning smile spreads across his face. Inside, besides Loader and the knights of the temple, there's also Ephra. They're happily drinking together. One knight, raising his glass, expresses gratitude to Ephra and Loader for saving him from a 4-armed ape monster. Ephra says this is Captain Loader's victory, and she wouldn't have been able to help without his exceptional skills. Another man argues that the monster was too weak. The fact that the knight couldn't defeat it proves his weakness. This sarcastic remark enrages the knight. He tells the man that their story doesn't concern him and orders him to leave. A heated argument ensues and they're on the verge of a fight. The tense situation is quickly diffused by the tavern owner. He reveals that the dragon in Dragon Island is currently in its breeding season. It has been kidnapping livestock and humans to eat, and he suggests the two go defeat it instead of causing trouble in the tavern. These words from the tavern owner also catch Lam Tien's attention. He senses a sense of worry. If the dragon attacks this town, the capital's reinforcements won't arrive in time. Even if all the adventurers in the town unite, they wouldn't be able to withstand the attack of those ferocious dragons. Disaster seems to be looming over the town. These words make the atmosphere in the tavern tense. Loader breaks the silence with a laugh. Haha, a few dragons? Nothing to worry about. Let me reveal something to you all. A holy knight is on her way here. Loader confidently introduces the holy knight as his teacher. Once she arrives, she will join them in defeating the dragons. The king won't need to send his army. After the situation is resolved, their group will return to the capital. This news excites the crowd. They are astonished to learn that Loader's teacher is a holy knight. They feel confident knowing that a holy knight will help them defeat the dragons. If this is successful, Loader will become the town's hero. Flattered by the praise, Loader proudly stands up and raises a toast to everyone, celebrating the holy knight's arrival and their imminent victory over the dragons. While everyone is happily drinking, Lamthine has a different plan. He needs to make the most of this opportunity. Lamthine stands up, pays his bill, and leaves. His departure catches Loader's attention. He asks why Lam Tien is leaving without joining them for drinks. Lam Tien turns his head and looks at Loader, saying, We'll have plenty of opportunities to drink together in the future. Then he leaves. His arrogance draws the attention of Loder and his men, provoking their anger. Time flies by. The people in town cheerfully celebrate the Holy Knight's arrival. Inside a church, a blonde-haired woman is praying. Loder stands behind her. Loder politely addresses her, "Master, the dragons are wreaking havoc everywhere. They're getting closer to the town. Now, no one dares to let their livestock out. The dragons might attack our town." The woman takes up her weapon and stands up. She is a beautiful woman with captivating blonde hair. Her silver armor gives her a commanding presence. She asks Loder about the things she requested him to prepare. Loder reports, "I have prepared 10 dragon hunting crossbows and I placed them at the highest points in the town." The woman seems pleased. She tells Loder to arrange everything well. If there's a mistake, that would be a huge embarrassment. The woman walks outside. The crowd below is immediately in an uproar. It's the first time they've seen the Holy Night. They praise her beauty and wonder which man could possibly win her heart. Someone who thinks she is an unattainable existence. Even the king wouldn't dare to express an opinion about her actions. The woman looks at the worried crowd. The situation is very dangerous. It's unnecessary to gather so many people here. Order the knights to disperse the crowd. But it seems that's no longer necessary. The commotion draws the attention of the dragon. It charges at the town, terrifying everyone, and one unlucky person was taken by the dragon. The woman anxiously announces, "This is just a scout dragon. Once it appears, more dragons will surely attack here. Loder, take your men to the wall and prepare to fight." Outside the town, on a cliff, a goblin scurries along. He informs his leader that the dragons are coming. From what he observed, there are many guards on the wall. The goblin asks what he should do next. The leader tells him to be silent and wait. It's not time to act yet. This leader is Lam Tien. He has brought his army here. He's waiting for the dragons to inflict damage upon the town. Then it'll be his chance to seek revenge. You want part 2? Write the secret word in the comments. Goblin, don't forget to subscribe and like. See you later and bye-bye.